Hello friends. In the previous video, we had discussed about material variances. Today, we will be talking about labor variances, the types of labor variances, the formulas to compute labor variances, and then few problems on how to solve labor variances. So let's begin. Labor cost variance. Labor cost variance. Now, the formula to compute labor cost variance is standard cost minus actual cost. Standard cost can also be denoted as standard hours into standard rate, minus actual cost can be denoted as actual hours paid into actual rate. What is actual hours paid? We did not have something like that in material. What is this? Let us understand. So in labor cost, we have two different types of actual hours. One, actual hours paid, and the other, actual hours worked. What's the difference between these two? So the difference is actual hours paid is the number of hours I'm actually paying the labor to work for. However, actual hours worked is the number of hours the labor were actually productively able to work for. Right? So remember, the actual hours worked is always going to be less than actual hours paid. Actual hours worked will be less than actual hours paid. In labor cost, we have three different types of variances. One is the rate. To compute rate, the formula is actual hours paid, standard rate into actual hours paid minus actual hours paid into actual rate. So similar to our material costing formulas, here we take the second term and write it in the second part, right? And multiply the middle two terms to arrive at the first part of the rate. Now the second variance is the idle time variance. Now, to compute idle time variance, one part would be this, the first part of rate, which is standard rate into actual hours paid, and the other would be my standard rate into actual hours worked. So what is idle time? Idle time is basically the difference between my actual hours worked and actual hours paid. Whatever is the difference between these two becomes my idle time. So one more way to write the idle time variance is the idle time into standard rate. We have to remember both of these formulas because the formula which we have to use in solving the problem would depend on the information provided in the problem. If the idle time is provided in the problem, we would use this second formula. However, if the uh, if the problem is silent about idle time, instead it gives the actual hours worked and actual hours paid, we can use the first formula. However, we can also use the second formula. Right. Moving on to the third one, which is the efficiency variance. Efficiency variance. So the formula here is standard hours into standard rate. As similar to our material variance, we take the first part of labor cost variance and write it as the first part of efficiency minus standard rate into actual hours worked. Now, if you see the actual hours worked here, the efficiency formula has got the same terms as the idle times variance, the first term, the first part of the idle time variance formula, right? So now, the efficiency variance can further be divided into two. Similar to material, we have yield variance and mix variance. The formula to calculate yield variance is similar standard rate into standard hours minus standard rate into revised standard hours. So in material we had revised standard quantity, here we have revised standard hours. To calculate mix, it is standard rate into revised standard hours minus standard rate into actual hours worked. So now, to further simplify the formula a little, if you see, the actual rate is only used twice in the entire labor cost variance. One is to compute the main labor cost variance itself. Second is to calculate the rate, right? So the actual rate will only be used twice, and the actual hours paid is also used used only three times. One in the labor cost variance, two in the labor rate variance, and third is the labor idle time variance, right? Now, uh, let me again show you the way we did in material cost variances, how to derive the formulas. So if you remember the formula for labor cost variance, which is standard hours into standard rate and actual hours paid into actual rate, you can derive these next level formulas, that is efficiency, idle time, and uh, rate variances. So the first part of standard cost, the first part of labor cost formula becomes the first part of efficiency variance. The second part of labor cost formula becomes second part of labor rate variance. You take the middle two terms, that is standard rate and the actual hours paid. You take the middle two terms, multiply them, and becomes the first part of our rate formula, and also becomes the second part of our idle time formula. Then the first part of idle time formula is also similar. The only difference is we have to take the actual hours worked, and in second part we take the actual hours paid. This is also paid, and the first part of idle time formula becomes the first part of the second part of efficiency variance, right? This is here and here, right? So there is only a slight change in material and labor variances. Now further, the third level can also be derived easily, like we did it in material variances. The first part of efficiency variance becomes the first part of yield, and the second part of efficiency variance becomes the second part of mix, and in between we multiply the standard rate into revised standard quantity. So remember, you have to remember this term, revised standard hours. So it was quantity in material, here we have revised standard hours. Now what is this revised standard hours? Revised standard hours, similar to as we had discussed in material variances, revised standard hours means if my standard hours were equal to my actual hours, what should have been the mix or the ratio of the labors in producing the product, right? So again, the yield and mix variance the yield and mix variance will only be computed if there are two or more different types of labors used or utilized to produce a product. If there is only one type of labor, then we cannot compute yield and mix. Now, moving on, let's look at a few problems on how to compute labor variances. Let us look at a simple problem in labor variances. First, let us read the problem. The standard and actual figures of a firm are as under. Standard time for a job 1000 hours, standard rate per hour 50, Actual time taken 900 hours, actual wages paid 36,000. First, let us write down the information provided in the question into our table. So the table will be standard hours, standard rate, standard cost, actual hours, actual rate, actual cost. Now, do we have the standard hours? Yes. What does the question say? It is 1000. Do we have the standard rate? Yes, it is 50. Do we have the actual hours? Yes, it says 900. Do we have the actual rate? No. However, they have given us the actual cost, that is 36,000. So let's see what is the standard cost. 1000 into, it will be 1000 into 50, which is 50,000. Actual rate. How do we calculate actual rate? That would be actual cost divided by the actual hours. The actual rate is 40. Now, the question does not specify which variances they want us to calculate. It just says calculate variance. In this situation, we have to calculate all the variances which is possible to calculate in the question, right? So let us see which all variances are possible. First, let us start with our first one, that is the labor cost variance. Let's start with labor cost variance. What is the formula to calculate labor cost variance? Standard hours into standard rate minus actual hours into actual rate. Now, if you look, I have not written actual hours paid. However, when we discuss the formulas, I said that we have to take actual hours paid. In this question, the actual hours paid and actual hours worked is not specified. So if that is not specified, we consider actual hours worked and paid to be the same. Since there is no difference, we will not have idle time variance. So one variance is removed. Now let us calculate this. So what will be my labor cost variance? What's my standard hour? 1000 into standard rate, which is 50, minus what's my actual hours? 900 to what's my actual rate? 40, which is equal to 50,000 minus 36,000, which is equal to 14,000. Favorable. Why favorable? Because the answer is in positive, right? Now, this can also be written in a different way. How? We can also write the formula as standard cost minus actual cost. Since we have already written in our table what is standard cost and what is actual cost, we can straight away take them and negate this one step. We can negate this one step to save time in the exam. So we'll write 50,000 minus 36,000, which is equal to 14,000. Favorable. Night. Next, what is the next level of variances? Next level of variances are labor rate variance, labor efficiency variance, and labor idle time variance. As I've already told you, since the question is silent about actual hours worked and actual hours paid, we assume that the actual hours paid and actual hours worked are same. So we will not have idle time variance. However, we can calculate the rate variance. How do we calculate the rate variance? Rate variance will be actual hours into standard rate, or standard rate into actual hours, minus actual hours into actual rate, which is equal to, what is my actual hours? 900 into standard rate is 50, minus what is my actual hours? 900 into actual hours, sorry, actual rate 40. So, how much will this be? 900 into 50 would be 45,000, minus 36,000, which is equal to 9,000. Favorable. Next, can we calculate labor efficiency variance? Yes, we can. What is the formula? Standard hours into standard rate minus standard rate into actual hours, which is equal to, standard hours is how much? 1000 into 50, my standard rate, minus 50 into 900, which will be equal to 50,000 minus 45,000, which is equal to 5,000 favorable. Now, here again we can perform our check, wherein labor cost variance should be equal to labor rate variance plus labor efficiency variance. Labor rate variance is 9,000 favorable and efficiency variance is 5,000 favorable. In total, we get 14,000 favorable, which matches to our labor cost variance computed in step 1. So, a very simple problem just to understand how to compute labor variances. Now, let us move on to a complicated problem. First, let us read the problem. NPX Limited uses standard costing system for manufacturing of its product X. Following is the budget data given in relation to labor hours for manufacture of 1 unit of product X. Skilled labor 2 hours at a rate of 6, semi-skilled labor at 3 hours at a rate of 4, unskilled labor at 5 hours at a rate of 3. In the month of January, total 10,000 units were produced. Following are the details. Skilled labor 18,000 hours at a rate of 7, amounting to 1,26,000. Semi-skilled labor 33,000 hours at a rate of 3.5, amounting to 1,15,500. Unskilled labor 58,000 hours at a rate of 4, amounting to 2,32,000. Actual idle hours abnormal during the month: skilled 500, semi-skilled 700, unskilled 800, total 2,000. Um, Now, first let us write down the information provided in the question. So let us begin with our table. We will have standard hours, then we will have revised standard hours. Why do we have revised standard hours? Because there are more than two labors which are used to manufacture the product. In the previous question, we only had one type of labor, so we did not have the revised standard hours. Revised standard hours again will only be can only be computed uh, when we have two or more different types of labors available in the problem. Next, we will have standard rate, then we will have standard cost, then we will have actual hours paid, actual hours worked, actual rate, and actual cost. Now, the question does not say us what is the actual hours paid or the actual hours worked. However, they say that the idle hours during the month are 500, 700, and 800 respectively. So when the question is talking about our idle hours, we should immediately know that we have to compute the actual hours paid and actual hours worked. Now, do we have the standard hours in the question? No, we do not have. What the question says is the budgeted hours per unit. So how do we calculate the standard hours? Is the total number of quantity produced into the budgeted hours. What is the total number of quantity produced? 10,000 units. So 10,000 into the budgeted hours per unit, that is 2, would become my standard hours. So this would be 20,000, and this would be 30,000, and this would be 50,000. So my total standard hours comes to 1 lakh, 1 lakh hours. Now we'll come to revised standard hours later. Do we have the standard rate? Yes. So the budgeted rate would also be the standard rate, which is 6, 4, and 3. So what is my standard cost? 20,000 into 6, 1,20,000. 30,000 into 4, again 1,20,000. 50,000 into 3, 1,50,000. So my total standard cost would come to 3,90,000. So actual hours paid. So since the question is not specifying which is the actual hours paid and which is the actual hours worked, we have to look at the information provided. So the second part of the question says, in the month of January, total 10,000 units were produced. Following are the details. Labor, 18,000 hours. So when they say 18,000 hours, they do not say whether it is actual hours paid or actual hours worked. However, further they state that what is the idle time for each type of labor. So what do we do here is we assume this to be our actual hours paid. We assume this to be our actual hours paid. So actual hours paid would be 18,000, 33,000, and 58,000. So the total of this is 1,09,000, which is provided in the question. However, let us recheck. Yes. Now, what is the actual hours worked? Actual hours worked would be actual hours paid minus the idle time. So idle time for skilled is 500. So this would become 17,500. This would be 32,300. And this would be 57,200. So the total of this would be 1,07,000. So the actual rate they have provided in the question, it is 7, 3.5, and 4. Actual cost also provided in the question, 1,26,000, 1,15,000, and 2,32,000. So the total of this is 4,73,500. Suppose if the actual cost was not given in the question, which actual hours do we have to use to compute the actual cost? It will always be actual hours paid, not the actual hours worked. So the actual cost will always be computed based on the actual hours paid. How much have I, for how many hours have I actually paid the laborers? Now coming to revised standard hours. So the revised standard hours, as we know, the total should be equal to 107. That is the actual hours worked, not the actual hours paid. We will not take this, we will take this. Why? Because we require revised standard hours to compute yield and mix. What do yield and mix form part of? Efficiency. What does efficiency give us? Efficiency gives us that how many hours the workers efficiently worked. Say for example, in 1 lakh hours, I had planned to produce 10,000 units, but how many hours did it actually take for them to produce? That is efficiency. What is the difference in cost due to the efficiency? Now the efficiency could be inefficiency or over efficiency. That is to say, well, it could be either they have worked lesser than what was planned for, or they have worked excess of what was planned for. Now revised standard hours, as I had already told you in material variances, revised standard hour means if my actual hours were equal to my standard hours, if my actual hours was equal to my standard hours, then what should have been the ratio of the labors? So now to compute this, what we will do is basically we will take 20,000 divided by 1 lakh into 107, right? we'll we will get the revised standard hours. What is 20,000? 20,000 is the standard hours for the quantity manufactured. What is 1 lakh? The total standard hours into the actual hours worked. So standard hours divided by total standard hours into actual hours worked. Right? This would be the formula. So 20,000 So 20,000 in divided by 1 lakh into 1 lakh 7,000. I get 21,400. For 30,000 divided by 1 lakh into 1 lakh into 1 lakh 7,000, I get 32,100. 50,000 divided by 1 lakh into 1 lakh 7,000, I get 53,500. So the total of this would be equal to 1 lakh 7,000. Now, now we have captured all the information which is required to compute the labor variances. Now let us begin to compute the labor variances. Since the problem does not state us any specific uh, specific order in which to calculate the labor variances, we can calculate whichever we want. However, the ideal thing would be to do either to go from top to bottom, or to bottom, or from bottom to top. So let us go from top to bottom uh, in our question. So first we will calculate labor cost variance. Labor cost variance is what? Standard cost minus actual cost. In the examination, please do not write these the short forms. Please write it completely: standard cost and actual cost. However, while writing the formulas, you can use short forms if you have already provided the full forms earlier. For example, in the table, you could write it as, you could write it as standard hours, and below that you can denote as sh. If you do that, then in the formula you can straight away write it as sh into sr minus AHP into AR. You can write this, no problem. So the first time when you are doing it in the exam, you have to give the full form. Then you can use the short forms, not an issue. And you don't have to write the formula every time. So say for example, when we are computing the variance for labor cost variance, you don't have to write the formula every time. You write it once, then you calculate for skilled, you calculate for semi skilled, you calculate for unskilled, right? And again, skilled you have to write completely. You just cannot write s and uh, hope complete 100% of the marks, right? You have to write skilled the way it is written in the question. How will the examiner know what do you mean unless you tell him to, right? I always like to think that the examiner is an idiot and you have to guide him. You have to guide him on the steps on how to arrive at the solution, right? So think he is an idiot and you are teaching him. So if you are teaching him, give as much detail as possible uh, from you in the exam, on your answer paper. I don't mean he is an idiot. I just like to think he is an idiot, right? So, standard cost for skilled is 1,20,000 minus actual cost is 1,26,000. So we have 6,000 adverse. Now again, why adverse? Because it is in negative. Now semi skilled, again the cost, standard cost is 1,20,000, actual cost is 1,15,500. My variance comes to 4,500 favorable. Why favorable? Why favorable? Because it is in positive. Unskilled, standard cost is 1,50,000, actual cost is 2,32,000. My variance comes to 82,000 adverse. Now next, let us calculate uh, labor rate variance. Labor rate variance. Now, to calculate labor rate variance, the formula is actual hours paid into standard rate minus actual hours paid into actual hours. Actual rate. For skilled, Actual hours paid is 18,000 into standard rate is 6 minus actual hours paid again 18,000 into 7, which will be 18,000 adverse. Coming to semi-skilled, my actual hours paid is 33,000 into standard rate of 4 minus actual hours 33,000 into actual rate is 3.5, which will be 16,500 favorable. Then we have unskilled. My actual hours paid is 58,000 into standard rate of 3 minus 58,000, which is actual hours paid, into standard actual rate of 4. So the variance comes to 58,000 adverse. Right. Now next let us calculate labor efficiency variance. What is the formula to calculate labor efficiency variance? Standard hours into standard rate minus actual hours worked into standard rate. Remember, actual hours worked. Since we have the idle time given in the problem, we are computing actual hours paid and actual hours worked. So here in labor efficiency, we will take actual hours worked. What is my standard hours? Standard hours for skilled labors, 20,000. To standard rate, which is 4, right? Sorry, it is 6. Got confused with another problem. It is 6 minus actual hours worked, 17,500 into standard rate 6. So how much will this be? 2,500. Sorry, not 2,500. 15,000 favorable. Coming to semi-skilled, 30,000 into 4 minus, what is my actual hours worked? 32,300 times 4. This is, we have 9,200 adverse. Coming to unskilled, 50,000 into 3 minus actual hours is 57,200. 57 actual hours worked, not the actual hours paid, into 3, which is equal to 21,600 adverse. 21,600 adverse. Now, before we move on to yield and mix variance, let us compute the idle time variances. Idle time variance. So the formula we will use is idle time into standard rate. Why idle time into standard rate? We can also use another formula called actual hours worked into standard rate minus actual hours paid into standard rate. You can use both these formulas. However, we are going to use the first one here since it is little easier. So for skilled, it is idle time is 500 into standard rate of 6, which will be equal to 3000. Adverse. Why adverse? Because idle time is always going to be in adverse. Idle time is always going to be in adverse. Idle time can never be beneficial to an organization. It is always a loss. It is always a loss. So idle time is always going to be adverse. It is never going to be favorable. Semi-skilled. Semi-skilled, how much is the idle time? 700. 700 into 4. 700 into 4, which is 2800 adverse. 2800 adverse. Then we have unskilled. Unskilled is how much? 800 into 3. 800 into 3 is 2400 adverse. 8400 adverse, right? Remember, you also have to give the totals of these. I have not calculated it, but you please provide the totals also for these in your examination. Now, before moving on to yield, let us do our check as well. What will be the check? Labor cost variance is equal to labor rate variance plus labor efficiency variance plus idle time. Why? Because labor cost variance is made up of three components. In the previous problem, we only had two, efficiency and rate. We did not have idle time. So since this would have come to zero, we had not taken in the solution. But here it is not zero. So we will take in the solution. So for skilled, what is the labor rate variance? 18,000 adverse plus efficiency variance is how much? 15,000 favorable plus idle time 3000 adverse. How much are we getting in total? 6000 adverse, right? So this shows we have calculated the variances correctly. We can also do it for semi-skilled, which would be 16,500 favorable plus 9,200 adverse plus 2,800 adverse. Now, uh, one more thing you have to note, which I had already told you in the previous video as well, is to make your calculations easier. Whenever you have favorable, assume it to be a positive figure, and whenever you have adverse, assume it to be a negative figure. However, do not write the signs in your examination. Do not write the signs in the examination. That will render your problem wrong. However, while calculating, please assume that favorable is positive and adverse is negative. So what we will do is 16,500 minus 9,200 minus 2,800. We get 4,500 favorable. We get 4,500 favorable. Into unskilled, we have 58,000 adverse plus 21,600 adverse plus 2,400 adverse, which will come to 58,000 plus 21,600 plus 2,400, which comes to 82,000 adverse. So we now, with this check, we can be sure that we have calculated all our references correctly. Now let us move on to yield and mix. Next, we will calculate labor yield variance and labor mix variance. First, let us see labor yield variance. So the formula to calculate labor yield variance is standard hours into standard rate minus revised standard hours into standard rate. What is my standard hours? 20,000 into standard rate of 6 minus revised standard hours is 21,400 into 6. So this is 20,000 minus 21,400 into 6, which is 8,400 adverse. Then semi-skilled, my standard hours is 30,000 times 4 standard rate minus 32,100 revised standard hours into 4. I get 8,400 adverse. Then I have unskilled. My standard hours is 50,000 into 3 minus my revised standard hours is 53,500 into 3, which is equal to 10,500 adverse. 10,500 adverse. Now let us calculate labor mix variance. So the formula to calculate labor mix variance is revised standard hours into standard rate minus actual hours worked into standard rate. For skilled, what is the revised standard hours? 21,400 into 6 minus actual hours worked 17,500 into 6, which is equal to 21,400 minus 17,500 into 6. Get 23,400 favorable. Then for semi-skilled, our revised standard hours is 32,100 into 4 minus my actual hours worked is 32,300 into 4, which is equal to 32,100 minus 32,300 into 4, 800, get 800 adverse. Then we have unskilled. Unskilled, my revised standard hours is 53,500 into standard rate of 3 minus minus actual hours worked is 57,200 into 3, which is equal to 53,500 minus 57,200 into 3, get 22,200 adverse. 53,500 minus 57,200 into 3. Sorry, 53,500 into 57,200 into 3. 53,500 into 57,200 into 3. 53,500 minus 57,200 into 3. Sorry, we get 11,100. We get 11,100 adverse. Now let us perform a check to see whether we have computed the yield and mix variance and the efficiency variance correctly. So the check would be, what the check will be, labor efficiency variance is equal to labor yield variance plus labor mix variance, right? So for skilled, one thing to note is when you're doing check, you can do it as a working note also, or you can do it at the end of the problem together for labor cost variance and labor efficiency variance. You don't have to do it as soon as you have computed the required variances. So What is my yield variance? 8400 adverse plus what is my uh, mix variance? 23,400 favorable. How much do we get? Minus 8,400 plus 23,400, we get 15,000. Get 15,000 favorable. We can just see whether it is correct or not. It is correct. So we can move on to our next one. Next is semi-skilled. Again 8,400 adverse plus 800 adverse. We get 9,200 adverse. Is this correct? Yes, it is correct. Now, next unskilled. We have 10,500 adverse, 10,500 adverse plus 11,100 adverse, which will be equal to 10,500 plus 11,100, which is equal to 21,600 adverse. If we check our labor efficiency variance, we have computed it correctly, right? It is matching. So this ends our second problem. Uh, One thing, if you have noted, is we have captured all the information in the table. Once we have captured the information in the table, we do not have to refer back to our question again. So this table helps us to capture all the information and provides the required information to calculate everything in one place. You do not have to go back to the question, keep referring and looking, okay, where is it, where is it, where is it? No. Since all the information is captured by you in a table in a standard format, which you can use for all the problems, it makes your life easier to compute, whether it be material variances or labor variances, and in future we will also see the overhead variances. Further in the question, after computing all the variances, it asks us something else. What does it ask? So next it asks us to also show the effect of labor rate variance if 5,000 hours of skilled labor are paid at 5.5 per hour and balance were paid at 7 per hour. So what does it mean? What it is asking us to do is, first, in the first part of the problem, what we have done is we have taken the actual labor hours, which is 18,000, uh, paid at a standard rate or a constant rate of 7. Now what it wants us to do is it wants us to compute if 5,000, if 5,000 labor hours are paid at 5.5 and the balance 13,000 are paid at 7 per hour. What will be the labor rate variance in this case? So we only have to calculate the labor rate variance. We do not have to calculate the other variances here. So let us calculate. How we will do this is, again, we can write the formula: labor rate variance is equal to standard rate into actual hours paid minus actual hours paid into uh, actual rate. So coming for skilled, so skilled we will divide it in two parts. One would be our standard rate of 6, standard rate of sorry, standard rate of 6 multiplied by 5,000. Why? Because there are two different rates. One for 5,000 hours paid at 5.5. So minus 5,000 into 5.5. This we get 5,000 into 0.5, we get 2,500 favorable. Then again we do 6 into 13,000. Why 13,000? Because my total labor hours is 18,000, actual labor hours paid, minus 5,000, which is paid at 5.5, balance we get as 13,000, right? 6 into 13,000 minus 13,000 into 7. So this will be 13,000 adverse. Semi-skilled will not change because semi-skilled again it is paid at a standard rate. The second part of the question is only talking about the skilled labor, not the semi-skilled labors or the unskilled labors. So we can write as it is what we had calculated in the first part, which is 16,500 favorable and 58,000 adverse for unskilled labor. So semi-skilled will be uh, semi-skilled will be 16,500 favorable and unskilled will be 58,000 adverse. So the total labor rate variance will be equal to total labor rate variance will be equal to 2,500 minus 13,000 plus 16,500 minus 58,000 comes to 52,000 adverse. 52,000 adverse. So this is my total labor rate variance. Now we will move on to our next problem. First, let us read the question. The standard labor employment and the actual labor engaged in a week for a job are as under. Standard number of workers in a gang 32, 12 and 6. Actual number of workers employed 28, 18, 4. Standard wage rate per hour 3, 2, 1. Actual wage rate per hour 4, 3 and 2. During the 40-hour working week, the gang may produce 1800 labor hours of work. Calculate labor cost variance, labor rate variance, labor efficiency variance, labor mix variance, and labor yield variance. So, in the problem, they do not state what is the standard hours, they do not state what is the actual hours. Instead, they give what is the standard number of workers and what is the actual number of workers. Further, they give that in a week, they were able to work for 40 hours, right? So this 40 hours becomes my actual hours for a week. And then they say that the gang may produce 1800 labor hours. This becomes my standard hours, total standard hours. 40 hours we will use to compute our actual hours. This is not the actual hours, this is a rate at which a worker will work, or the number of hours a worker will work in a week, or has worked in a week, right? So let us first put down our table, which is standard hours, then we have revised standard hours, then we have standard rate, standard cost, actual hours, actual rate, and actual cost. Now, in the problem, they do not even mention about the idle time. Neither do they mention that there is an actual hours worked and actual hours paid. So we assume that the actual hours paid is equal to actual hours worked, and we do not have to calculate the idle time variance, and we don't even have to worry about uh, the formulas to remember whether we have to take the actual hours worked or actual hours paid. That is a good thing here. So first we will see what is the actual hours. So to compute actual hours, what will we do is we'll take the actual number of workers, which is 28, multiply it with the actual hours in a week, which is 40. So 28 into 40, we get 1120. This is skilled, semi-skilled, unskilled, right? Then we do the similar thing for semi-skilled. 18 into 40, we get 720, and then we do for unskilled, 4 into 40, we get 160. So the total of this will come to 2000, right? Yes, the total of this will come to 2000. Now, uh, yeah, one thing you have to remember is you have to show the calculations wherever necessary. So this is a necessary part. How did you get to 1120? The examiner doesn't know how did you get to 1120. You know, you have to tell him. So how do you tell him? You can write it 28 into 40. You can prepare a working note and write it there, or you could also leave a line here, and in that line you can write it 28 into 40, right? So next let us calculate our standard hours. Now what the question says is how the gang may produce 1800 labor hours in a week. 1800, so that becomes my total standard hours. Total standard hours is 1800. But how do we calculate the total standard hours? So to calculate the total standard hours, we will prepare a working note for you to understand easily. So what we'll do is skilled, semi-skilled, and unskilled. The number of workers, we have 32, we have 12, and we have 6. Then the standard hour per week is 40, 40, and 40. So the let's say this is A, this is B. What is A into B? Let's say call this C. So 32 into 40, we get 1280. 12 into 40, we get 480. 6 into 40, we get 240. So how much is this? 1280 plus 480 plus 240. This is 2000. Now, at the actual rate, I have got 2000. At the actual rate, I have got a total of 2000. However, we have only worked for 1800. The standard hours can only be 1800. So what do? We compute, okay, for 2000 this is the ratio, for 2000 this is the ratio. What will be for the what will be the ratio if the total standard hours is 1800? So how do we do that? It is very simple. What do? We take 1280 divided by 2000 into 1800, which is 1152. Then 480 divided by 2000 into 1800, 432. Then 240 divided by 2000 into 1800, we get 216. Right? So this becomes my standard hours, which we can write it here: 1152, 432, and 216. If you check, the total of these three would come to 1800. Yes. Next, I did not name this column. Why? Because this column, if you see, it represents my revised standard hours. How? What is my actual hours? 2000. What is my standard hours? 1800. What should be my revised standard hours? Revised standard hours. What is revised standard hours? As the explanation I have given you earlier, revised standard hours means if my standard hours was equal to my actual hours, what should be the ratio of my labor employed? What should be the ratio of my labor employed? Right? So uh, if you see here, our actual hours is 2000, our standard hours is 1800. However, there is another uh, calculation which we have done which amounts to 2000, and it is in the ratio of our standard hours. Since it is in the ratio of our standard hours, it becomes our revised standard hours. Revised standard hours. 480 and 240, this total comes to 2000. Now, what is my standard rate? Standard rate is 3, 2, and 1. What is my actual rate? 4, 3, and 2. What will be my standard cost? 1152 into 3, 3456. 3456. 432 into 2, 864. 864. 216 into 1, 216. What is the total? 3456 plus 864 plus 216. It comes to 4536. 4536. Now coming to our actual cost, 1120 into 4, it is 4480. 720 into 3, 2160, and then 160 into 2, 320. 320. So the total is 4480 plus 2160 plus 320. 6960. Now, now that we have filled in our table, we can easily calculate all the variances, which I have already taught you in the previous two problems. I will not be calculating the variances. I'm going to end the video here. I specifically took this problem because I found it interesting on how we calculate the standard hours, the actual hours, and the revised standard hours in this. If I ever get if I ever find similar problems or problems which I feel which are little complicated and interesting, I would definitely share it with you with the solution, obviously. Thank you for watching the video, and please do comment and share, and also share your questions on my email ID, which is on your screens right now. Do share the video, like the video, and subscribe to my channel for future updates. Thank you.